Hi, everyone. This is Megan. It's just me tonight, but don't worry, Stephen will be back very soon for our next episode. And this is the Synchrony podcast, where we talk about transforming apostolic dating culture and ending loneliness in the church. And I'm really excited about this episode. I'm going to be sitting down with a friend and someone who I really admire, Olivia Hill, also known as Liv Hill of Liv Hill Nutrition. If you haven't heard of her, she is an apostolic nutritionist and nutritional coach. And she's worked with people in all different walks of life to help them really understand nutrition and how to best honor their temple, to feed their bodies and live a whole and healthy life. I love what she does, and I wanted to bring her onto the podcast because I thought you all deserve to hear about what she does and meet her and hear how awesome she is. I also thought it was a great idea because a lot of times we spend a lot of time talking about conventional attractiveness, body size, body shape. And it can feel like a topic that we have to sort of walk on eggshells around. It can be really hard for people to navigate questions about the type of body they prefer, the type of body that they have. And all of those things are so front and center in our dating culture that it can really put people kind of on the back foot. So in this podcast episode, we're not going to talk about how to lose weight because we don't think that's everyone's goal. And certainly not how to lose weight in order to get a dating partner because it doesn't work that way. We will be talking, though, about body size and weight. We'll be talking about nutrition. We'll be talking about actions that anyone could take if they wanted to make changes to their body or changes to their health. And we're going to talk about why it's important to prioritize doing some of those things before getting married. So I'm really excited for you to hear this chat with Liv. A couple of quick announcements are going to be tagged on to the end of the video, so please stick around and make sure that you listen to those. And yeah, enjoy the episode and enjoy my chat with Liv. Oh, one other thing. We're still working out our studio setup, as you can see behind me. It's very much a work in progress. So if you hear some echo, I apologize. My video, if you happen to be watching the YouTube video, is also going to look like I'm in witness protection. Because it's just this scary black screen behind me. So anyway, bear with us. We're figuring ourselves out. But I think this is a talk worth listening to. And if you want to connect more with Liv, all of her information will be in the description of this episode. All right, enjoy. I am so excited to be sitting down to chat with Liv Hill of Liv Hill Nutrition. And Liv, you and I met kind of by happenstance, I think last year at NYC, if I remember correctly. We were both boothing. And I just remember getting so excited about everything you were doing. And since then, I feel like I have heard your name everywhere. I don't know if I've told you this. I've run into so many people who have worked with you or who are sort of have met with you and just have amazing things to say. So I was so glad when we bumped into each other again. I was like, we need to sit down and talk on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here and doing this.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, we were booth mates at NYC, and then we were in passing at NAYC, and it had been almost a year since we'd seen each other.
Yeah.
And we both said, hey, and we both recognized each other. And then I got home and I was like, I've got to know who that is. I was like, I know her. We're friends. But it was just so much at NAYC.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those random 1:00 in the afternoon things.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately was like, okay, I've made the connection. So it was so good to see you again and just reconnect. So, and I've heard great things. I think we have a couple of mutual clients actually, and I've heard just such great things about what you guys are doing over here as well.
Yeah. And it's been so cool just to, again, I feel like we have such a cool vantage point into the body of Christ and how different people are in there just taking control of their lives. And it's been really cool just to sit sideline. So I'm excited to pick your brain. If people are tuning into this, obviously they've probably read the title of the podcast, which is, when we come up with the title of the podcast, is going to have probably something to do with nutrition, with body image, with weight. And that's really the space that we're talking about. This is a sensitive issue for a lot of people. And so I do want to just caution people hey, know yourself. If this is a conversation that you feel like is going to be difficult or unproductive for you, we won't be mad if you don't tune into this. But I wanted to have a really open conversation with you from your perspective about kind of that space and how it interacts with dating. But before we get into that, can you just kind of tell us like your story? How would you explain how you got into doing the work that you do and why you did?
Yeah, well, okay, so it's a long story, so I'll try to condense it and give you the condensed version. But ultimately, for many many years, I worked a corporate job. I worked at a mortgage company in a bank for almost 20 years, and after that 20-year time period, they laid off our entire department, and
Mm,
so they sent us all home, and it was really a big deal to be corporate and then sent home. And during that time, God really spoke to me and said, "You're going to go home and raise your two children." And I thought, oh man, that sounds fantastic, because I was working corporate and traveling all the time, and my kids were little. And then about 2 weeks in, I realized that my kids weren't really interested in PowerPoint presentations. And my kids were not interested in, all the corporate things that I had done for two
their
decades.
quarterly objectives for their
Yeah.
Play-Doh infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah, at 3 and 5, they had no interest in those things, and
Mhm.
so, that was a tough season, and I bring that season up, because that was definitely, a wilderness season for us, losing,
Mm,
that job and that income. And I always tell the story, of that, because God was
mm,
so faithful and provided over and over again for us. And so during that wilderness season, a lot of odd jobs, a lot of different things going on. And my personal history, was I had lost 150 pounds naturally on my own. At that time, it had probably been about 8 or 10 years. And I was introduced to the world of nutrition coaching and being a nutritionist. And I had never heard of that. When I lost that weight on my own, that was just my own thing. I wasn't doing it. You never need to do it for anybody else, and we'll talk about that later. But
mm,
um, and so, but I didn't realize that what the Lord was doing when I was in a prayer closet and working through my journey of losing 150 pounds, that down the road, 15 years, He said, "This is what you're going to do for the body of Christ. You're going to
mm.
help other people figure out nutrition, get healthier." And so, uh, a few years after being laid off, I did start going to school, went back, got all the education that I needed, opened up a nutrition company. We are embarking on year number 4, and it's been a crazy but fun journey. So that's what got us here, and it has been just a blessing to see other people thrive.
I'm so excited about that, and so I think it's so valuable for this to happen from within the church too. I mean, obviously, we want apostolics in every facet of work everywhere, right? But something that I've thought about is that, as apostolics, our lifestyle in the setting that we're in, especially in the Western church and the American church,
Yes.
makes it very difficult to cultivate the kind of lifestyle practices that really are conducive to like a healthy life by default, if that makes sense. We're our sleep is irregular. We're doing all kinds of crazy stuff throughout the week. We fellowship over food. Um, if you're in the South and you fellowship over really, rich food, I don't know if that just applies down here, but that's my exposure. Um, and that's kind of how we show care to each other. That's sort of our love language, and that's baked deep into, I think, the culture that we come from. You know, we have people in all different facets of American life, which means some folks have more or fewer resources to devote to their health. And so I think it creates an environment where it can be really challenging for people within the church, women in particular, trying to be modest out in spaces where people are exercising or feeling confident moving in those spaces that are more physically focused can be a real barrier.
Mhm.
What have you kind of noticed about, like, I guess, like, the unique challenges for our church community, or maybe not even the most unique challenges, but just the things that you're seeing people encounter more frequently that you're kind of helping to address?
Yeah, frequent challenges, as you hit a lot of the nails on the head, is that we do live a different lifestyle.
Mhm,
And that is where there's a lot of disconnect between what you're going to see folks view nutrition as. They can look at nutrition as being something very difficult, very hard, very unsustainable. This is never going to fit my lifestyle. I'm not going to be a gym rat, and
right.
so they swing that pendulum way far over, abs, you've got abs, you're working out all the time. And it's like, I'm either going to envision that's healthy and that's too unobtainable. So then I'm just going to swing to the other arc where I am and just, not really putting much thought or effort or energy into consistently taking care of the vessel that God has given us. And
Right.
so what I work on is trying to bridge that gap and help folks find the middle ground. Because if we can find that middle ground, and especially within the apostolic faith, of what works with our lifestyle, right? So, to the point that you were saying, if you are fellowshipping after church and you're going out to Applebee's or you're going to a potluck or, anything like that, how can you make a choice with your food that lines up with you caring for the temple that doesn't equate, chicken and salad for every meal all the time, right? So
Right.
it's bridging the gap between idealism and completely giving up on everything and saying there's no hope.
You said something so important, which I think is that like a lot of the things that drive struggle with this. I mean, and I don't want to apply like put words in other people's mouths. This has been my history with it, has been that like, you know, I have a vision in my mind of what the expectation is,
Mhm.
right? And, as a woman, it's a certain dress size, it's being able to wear certain things, it's being able to attract a certain kind of attention, especially when I was younger, right?
Yeah.
Um, and, when you hit a realization that that particular paradigm might not be attainable in the moment that you're in life,
Mhm.
it is tempting to just sort of put that on the back burner and say like, okay, if I can't live in cognitive dissonance, right? Where what I want and what I feel like I should be doing is not attainable for me. So I'll just ignore it. And I think that's such a powerful thing to really say, hey, what are we aiming for? Like let's aim for something that is realistic and healthy and focused on the goals that you have and not something that was handed down and given to us by culture or society that we never really made our own. Would you say, that kind of like how do we disarticulate that from how we actually live our lives?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And we can get to a point to where we feel like, what's the point? I've been there. What's the point? This is never going to get better. This is where I
Mhm.
am. And uh, what you're saying is like, at some point, you do have to take the blindfold off of things and say,
Mhm.
okay, how am I feeling about my body? Do I want to make different choices? But then finding that balance of well, how do I do this without going all in? How do I make these moderate choices? But you're right. We want to, if we can't reach this certain goal, then
Mhm.
sometimes we just don't try anything at all.
Yeah.
But then that doesn't put us in a good place because you add decades on. If you're in your
Mhm.
20s, it might be okay, but then you start adding decades on to not really trying at all. And
Mhm.
it starts to pile up over time, and it really doesn't put you in a good mental space. Or if we're talking about not physical the way you look, but
Mhm.
health, not in a good health space.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was hoping for us to kind of get at is obviously like this is a dating focused podcast, right? Like we talk about apostolic dating culture and to really pull the curtain back for everyone here, like my goal in having Live On is not to preach to people that they need to lose weight as a way to get the happy life that they want because ultimately weight loss is not a means to an end for dating and relationship success,
Yeah,
right?
right.
There are so many things that go into our dating culture, and weight is definitely not the only aspect of challenge that people encounter, but it is a challenge for a lot of people, not because necessarily that they're, I don't want to, I'm painting with a really broad brush here because I want to make sure people feel seen by this, but not feel targeted, right? Like weight is something that can have a profound effect on someone's confidence. It can have a profound effect on how they view their bodies, how they interact with people of the opposite sex. It can have an effect on whether or not they feel comfortable approaching people in different settings. And because of those body expectations that are floating out there and that have been handed down to us, through all kinds of different media and everything else, there are physical preferences that we're encountering, patterns of what people are express preference for that
Mhm.
can be difficult for somebody in a larger body to navigate the dating landscape. We talk all the time about how, like, right now, our dating culture in the church and outside of the church is just incredibly challenging for everyone.
Mm.
You can do all the right things. You can put yourself out there. You can go to all the right events. You can put yourself on the apps and in the Facebook groups and still find that you haven't met someone.
Mhm.
And in that landscape that is full of barriers, sometimes body image and weight can create additional barriers for people that are really difficult for them to feel like they have power to address. Does that kind of map with what, I guess, how does that resonate with what you've seen as you've worked in this space? Like, does that feel like um, an oversimplification of it? Like, how would you respond to that based on what you've
I
seen?
think that's good, Megan. I think that's really good. And if you're watching, I'm looking off in the distance because I'm processing,
Mm,
what you're saying. One thing that you said is that losing weight is, I can't quote you exactly, but it's
mm,
not going to give you the euphoric happiness. Like
mm,
it is not going to ultimately open up the dating pool for you. If I can
mm.
speak into your world a little bit, right? You're not going to drop 50 pounds and then all of a sudden the dating world is going to open right up and you're going to have tons of things floating in.
Yep.
What I have seen and experienced, we start with a whole body approach. So we are looking at how do you feel? What is your energy like? What habits do you want to improve?
Mm,
And so we are not a lose weight company. We are a feel better, get some confidence to your point, and get some control over your health. That's what we preach and teach is you need to be in the driver's seat as much as possible in your health. Of course, Lord is at the top of the driver's seat, but he expects us to do our part as well. But going along those lines, I have seen people who have lost 50 pounds, 100 pounds. We have several people, and they do have more confidence, but it hasn't opened up. They
mm.
haven't walked on streets of gold just because they've lost that weight.
Right.
So I think there's one that you've got to realize that if you are chasing a number or you're chasing a scale number and you think that the end result is going to be everything's going to come up roses, you probably want to reevaluate
Mm,
your thought process on that. The other part is I've had some people that haven't really lost a lot of weight with me, but their confidence level has gone through the roof.
mm,
That confidence level becomes a very attractive quality. And that confidence is built from I'm taking care of myself. I know the choices that I'm making are quality choices. I know that I'm setting up some disciplines around how I want to steward my body. And they start to feel more confident. And I have seen with clients in situations like that. And again, some have lost weight and they've really found that confidence. Some have not lost weight and really found that confidence. That to me is more of an attractive quality, and that comes from self-work.
yeah. Tell me about what you feel like the origin of that confidence is, because I could hypothesize, but like, what if people told you about why, even if the numbers don't change for them,
Mhm.
what is it about the process that you feel like cultivates that confidence?
The process is it's going to come a lot down, first to just having some discipline. I think that in any time where we have some type of discipline in our life, whether that's Bible reading, getting a daily walk, you feel more in control and you feel like you have more autonomy over your body when you're the one making the calls instead of just going with the flow, right? Just going with the flow, whatever comes my way, I'm just going to deal with it. Maybe I don't walk or move my body at all today. There's not a lot of empowerment in that. I'm not saying you have to be extremely disciplined. I'm not an extremely disciplined person, but again, that pendulum swing, right? Like you want to find that middle ground where you're saying, I am getting in a daily walk every day. That's important to me. I like the way that it makes me feel. I'm committed to that. And when you keep those promises to yourself, every time you keep a promise to
Mm,
yourself, your trust in yourself and your confidence will start to rise. And so that to me is where they start to appreciate their body, honestly, Megan. And that's what it comes down to is they start to appreciate what their body can do. And
yeah.
they're proud with a godly pride. They're proud of their body and what their body can do.
Mm. I thought it was beautiful how you phrased that, like keeping promises to yourself, because I think, and when we talk about dating, it challenges with dating are often they have their root somewhere completely different, right?
Mhm.
Oftentimes, they have their root in very deep-seated expectations that people have for themselves or that they have for other people, or very deep wounds that are from years ago or from childhood. And I think to get into a habit of making promises to yourself and following through on them, we talk to people who have come through series of
Mm.
difficult or unhealthy relationships where they didn't feel like they could set the expectation for someone else to give them those things, right? Like, hey, I've been in several dysfunctional relationships where I felt like I was giving and giving all the time, and they kind of wouldn't show up for me, but I wouldn't recognize it and I would let it go for a really long time. That's a really hard mindset to break out of if you've never been able to keep promises that you've made to yourself, right? In air quotes, like you've set goals for yourself that you feel like you've fallen short of. It sounds like developing that discipline can also make you feel like you're worth somebody else demonstrating that to you. And I think that's a really valuable thing if you're thinking about looking for a partner. I'm worth being promised something. I'm worth showing up
Oh,
for.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And this is where your world, I don't understand that side of your world. I don't
Yeah.
see that side of your world, but you're right. Do you want someone to keep a promise to you? And if they break that promise and they break that trust over and over again, is that an attractive quality that you are looking for in someone?
Mm.
I don't think so. And so you have to start with yourself. And if you're able to keep promises to yourself, you said it beautifully. Yeah, you're going to value your character, you as a person, and you're going to want that same thing in a spouse or a mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the whole idea that like it's worth it to invest into the self-work before you're married.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that as you were talking about just the value of kind of going into that process. Like, I think sometimes we get into a habit, and I think this is true in church sometimes, especially of like thinking that marriage is going to fix a
Yeah.
whole series of things,
Sure.
right? We just finished up a series about pornography addiction and how marriage does not address the root of that addiction,
Right.
right? If you have it beforehand, you're going to have it when you get married. Um, I went into my marriage expecting it to solve my body image issues.
Mm.
you know, I had this amazing, handsome, wonderful man who loved me and who promised to be with me forever. And we were, building life together. And for the first time, another human had complete access to my body in all the ways that were, deeply uncomfortable and brought up all these issues. And I realized probably a year into our marriage, like, oh my goodness, he didn't fix it. Like
Yes.
having someone choose me was not enough
Hmm.
to fix the core of that kind of brokenness. I feel like if people, I guess what I'm aiming at is there's right and wrong reasons to want to change your body, right? Changing your body to get someone so that they can fix your feelings about your body won't work. Would you kind of agree?
Oh, I would totally agree. You have to, if you want to make changes in your body, and again, as you were saying, like this podcast is not to push you to lose weight. That's
Mhm.
not the push of this podcast. But the point is that if you want to change your weight, that's okay too. And I think there's a
Yeah.
stigma, a little bit of a stigma around that as well. Like, you're vain, you're selfish, you're changing your body for a myriad of reasons. And there's a huge drive in body positivity. And I am for body positivity, but I'm also for, is your heart healthy,
Yeah.
or where are we at on the diabetes, scale and things like that. So also want to say there's nothing wrong with wanting to change your body. There's
Yes.
nothing at all wrong with wanting to get healthy. And a lot of times if you're reaching towards diabetes, or your heart, you're not doing anything to get muscle or get your heart moving or things like that, you need to get those things in line as well. But you have to, I'll say that just to say, you have to do it for yourself. So whatever
Mm.
reason it is, nobody can fix that for you. You have to decide for yourself, I want to do this for me. Why do I want to do this for me? And if someone cheerleads me, then that's fantastic. If someone chooses not to cheerlead me, that's fantastic. And I feel like that includes your mate,
Mhm.
because, or your spouse, if your spouse, if you're already married and doesn't choose to cheerlead you on in that, but you feel like that's something you need to do and it's for a positive reason, going towards health, then you definitely need to do that. And maybe they will cheerlead you, but you've got to always have your mindset and doing it for you.
Can I ask, and feel free to tell me if you don't want to talk about this. I'm curious in your experience. So obviously you now walk with people as they go through this and you can kind of help coach them in sort of these mindset shifts. But you did this on your own for the most part, it sounds like. What, in your experience, what was the deciding factor that kind of motivated your change? Like, do you remember when it was like, okay, this is why I'm going to do this for me.
Yeah, I do. And I will say I did it on my own, but Lord, it was trial and error. And I wish I would have had somebody with some knowledge to walk
Yeah,
me through it. It would have been
I'm
a lot.
sure.
It would have been a lot easier if I would have had somebody to guide me that had the knowledge. And I think this might be worthwhile to talk about too, Megan,
Mm,
is that when my husband and I got married, I was not super lean when we
yeah.
got married. I wore a plus size wedding dress. I actually had a very horrible experience buying a plus size
Mm,
wedding dress. I went to one of the local places in town. We were very young. I don't know what we were doing then when we were getting married. I've been
sure.
married almost 25 years. But with that being said, they told me, we don't sell your size down here on the showroom floor, but you're welcome to go up in the attic and look around if you want. Yeah. And, this was 24 years ago, right? And so there was
Ugh,
not any body positivity then, going around in culture for sure. So I was plus size when we got married and then just continued to put weight on. I'm just going to be real frank about it, and I
mm,
got up to the place to where I was over 280 pounds
mm,
when I finally said, I need to get this stuff in line. And so I will say that my husband has been fantastic. He has been a supporter of me. He
mm,
has been a wonderful support. I have learned through the years to love nutrition, to love working out, I can't say I love working out. Let me just say that. I can't say that I love it, but I do
right,
it because like you brush your teeth because you need to do things, right?
right.
Uh, but I don't totally disdain it. But my husband does not love nutrition the way that I love nutrition. He's
Mm,
like, good for you. You keep going. He's never hindered me, but he doesn't have that same desire and love for it. So I'm kind of getting off the path and you can steer me back on.
no,
But
this is great.
with that being said, it comes down to he married me with my body. He married me with the body type that I was at.
Mm,
And then I did lose 150 pounds and I've kept that off for 15 years. So, you have to marry someone who, like you say, loves you for character reasons, for moral reasons, for what you stand for, because changes can happen along the way in your marriage, and that can
mm,
go either way, and you want to make sure that your spouse loves you for who you are. I love him for who he is. I encourage him to walk so that he has good heart health and those types of things, but he never negatively biased me
mhm,
when I was over 280 pounds, when I was 130 pounds, either way. And the same for him, right? So whatever he chooses to do. And so I think that goes back to making sure that things can change through your marriage. Things can make some big changes, but you want to make sure that foundation is built on somebody that supports you as a person, not those physical attributes. But then
mhm.
also maybe being open-minded that things could change, right?
Right. I think that's such a good point because like I've had people who have been like, oh, this person, I'll introduce them to someone and they'll say, oh, this person is just on the cusp of what I find attractive in body type.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I'm not sure. And I'll be like, well, anybody that I introduce you to, their body type might not stay static, right? Like I
Yeah.
think that, this definitely applies to men. I think it's very true for women because as we go through phases with, if you have biological children, if you go through a phase of breastfeeding, if you go through perimenopause, like all these different things.
Menopause.
Oh, yeah,
Menopause.
like
Yeah.
I'm watching women in my life that I love kind of approach that and I'm like, I ain't ready. Like, Lord have mercy. Um so like all these things are going to they're going to write their story across our bodies in ways that aren't necessarily conventionally attractive.
Yeah.
You're signing up for that with anybody,
Mhm.
no matter what they look like when you meet them in their mid to late 20s, you know. um I guess the thing that I want to talk about too is this idea of health, nutrition, and conventional attractiveness, because I think those things get intermingled in a way that can be really unhelpful for some people, right? Because I think, and we can lay this blame at the foot of society. Anthropologists love to point to cultural studies about this and say that, oh, there are these trends across cultures. I don't know, but I think a lot of times we equate being skinny with being healthy
Sure.
in a way that's not necessarily true. even though there are trends of, hey, carrying a certain amount of excess fat is going to have these negative consequences on your weight. How do you navigate that conversation with people? Because I feel like there's a lot of stuff tangled up in there that can be really hard to kind of dissect.
Yeah, so much tangled up. There can be people that are extremely lean and be extremely unhealthy, right?
Mhm.
And so there can be, again, people that are overweight and extremely healthy. There can be people that get their labs drawn. We do functional work where we do look at labs and things like that. And I've
Yes.
pulled lean people's labs, and I'm like, oh, this is, I say, look under the hood,
Yeah.
and I'm like, ooh, these ain't looking good, girl, and then I'll pull somebody that might be on the heavier side, and their labs look beautiful, right?
Mhm.
And so that first and foremost, never judge a book by its cover, right? For
Mhm.
sure. Really, for women and men, for women, focusing on what activities am I doing, right? So, protein is going to be something that's always important for women to eat. And we live in this protein society right now. It's
Right.
like protein, protein, protein. But there is a lot of value and merit to eating protein and getting good quality protein in. The other thing is lifting weights. So, lifting weights, adding muscle to your frame. Ladies, as we joke about perimenopause, if you want to have a more successful transition from perimenopause to menopause, muscle is going to be your very best friend.
Mhm.
And so, when you talk about body types and body styles, while a skinny body may be, feel like it's more appealing, a muscular body, having some muscle on your frame, making sure that you can lift some things, take care of something, take care of yourself. That muscle is a powerhouse, and that muscle, you're not going to look bulky. I do have to go through that with women. Like,
No.
I'm like, to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, first of all, how many women do you know that look like that? You're
Right.
not going to look that way, but you want to focus on how much muscle can I build.
Mhm.
That's going to be just huge, 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 huge. And you can do that at home. Um, and so working through, I want a body that amplifies health.
Yes.
I want a body that I can walk up 2 flights of stairs and not pretend like I'm coughing, because I
Yeah.
can't breathe,
Oh
right?
my gosh, you're reading my mail, Liv.
All of us, I've been there, but and so I really, to answer that question, I point towards health. And
Mhm.
we don't take that in consideration because social media, all of the outlets have us, skinny talk, all of those things, have us pointing towards skinny. But if you can get into your mindset, men and women, that the name of the game is health. How healthy can I be? And health can be some of those indicators. Can I walk a mile? When's the last time I ran at all?
Mhm.
And those markers, if you start aiming towards health, have I eaten a vegetable today? Have I eaten fruit today? Like, I know
Right.
that sounds crazy, but I ask that in seminars, like, when's the last time you ate a vegetable? And I say, raise your hand if you've had one in the last week. And like, the amount of hands that gets raised are so low.
Well, I I came across an article a couple years ago about the resurgence of scurvy in
Hmm.
college age young men in particular, and it's terrifying and hilarious to think that a disease that in a day and age where we have grocery stores and refrigerators
Yeah.
should never be able to get back. For those of you who don't know, scurvy is a deficiency in vitamin C that usually comes from not consuming any plant matter, right?
Right.
And it causes all kinds of crazy health stuff. The idea that our young men could have their teeth falling out because they haven't had a piece of plant in months is
Months.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's accurate. But it's
Mhm.
so accurate. And so I always start with health.
Mhm.
What can we do from a health perspective? And that is brings in some mental health components to that too.
Mhm.
Rest, quit stressing out all of the time,
Yeah.
So that's what we work on in coaching, but also that's where you want to start is if you can work on your mindset, less, I don't care for these words, but less fat and skinny
Mhm.
and more health focused. What am I doing so that I can be healthy?
Yeah. I think it's so important, and it's something, it's funny because we work with people who this might surprise some people. So our youngest clients are in their early 20s. Our oldest clients are in their mid 70s.
Yeah.
And we have quite a few people that are dating kind of in that later chapter of life where they've gone through a lot of the ups and downs with their health and their weight, and they're kind of looking towards this sort of sunset season and wanting to share it with someone. And when I ask them about preferences for the person that they're with, they talk about functional things,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Their priorities are, I still want to be able to play with my grandkids. I want to have someone who can go on long walks with me. I love to go to the beach. I want to have someone who can swim with me. It's about, these are the types of function that make my life rich,
Hmm.
right? And
Yes.
people don't understand that that is something that they have had to invest in for
Mhm.
decades in order to have. And that isn't to say like you can improve your health at any time. I believe like there's always, the right time is yesterday, but the second best time is now or whatever. Like you can always take steps and things can always improve from where you are. But to hear people talk about, hey, like the things that matter most to me about my body in this next phase of life are not how conventionally attractive I am or the other person is, how much weight we are or are not carrying, how much we do or don't look like celebrities. It's, I want to be able to walk with my partner and enjoy the outdoors and enjoy the type of
Mhm.
life that makes it feel meaningful, you know? And I wish we could all adopt sort of some of that sense of priority much younger to
Yeah.
say like, how do I start to invest now into this sort of physical bank account that I'm going to be drawing from in
Mhm.
my 60s and 70s, and hopefully beyond, right?
That's beautiful though, Megan, and that's so true. And I'm pondering what you're saying because I haven't really thought about it that way. But
Mhm.
when I would imagine that in the earlier years, the younger dating scene, it's what does your body look like, right? Like that's
Mhm.
probably higher on the Richter scale of importance. But it boils down to at the end of the day, when you start to reach those 60s and 70s, it's the mobility, it's the
Mhm.
functionality, right?
Yeah.
Because those folks really, I would imagine, don't care as much about the weight that they're carrying. But to your point, like, can you pick my grandkid up and hold them in your arms?
Mhm.
They don't want someone who isn't mobile. They don't
Right.
want someone who's bound to a recliner,
Mhm.
90% of the time, or they ache and pain. That can't be an attractive quality.
Right.
So what you're saying is so true. Like, and that happens, like the saying goes, what you work on today affects you a decade later, right?
Right.
And so you want to be someone who can walk and run and pick things up. And I know that probably doesn't resonate with you if you're 30 or even maybe
Mhm.
40, should at 40s start to resonate with you, but you want someone who you can enjoy life with.
Right. And just, being aware of the fact too, I think about this all the time. Um, Something I've had to recognize. So for context, my day job, I work in software.
Yeah.
So I work at a desk, I work at a computer. If I chose to, I would sit all day. And I'm frankly 8 years in, I'm just now choosing to not do that.
Yeah.
Like it's been a lot of sedentary work. And I had this realization that like my grandmother, who in her early 80s is in fantastic health, thank God, and has certainly had health challenges, but is really doing well. I look at the default level of activity and
Yes.
the default nutrition of her life when she was my age, and
Hmm.
it is vastly different. You know, the fact that and she worked a white collar office job, but the fact that she had to run and down several up and down several flights of stairs every day, and
Hmm.
she walked to go get lunch at a small diner that made her a homemade tuna melt or chicken salad sandwich and a cup of soup every day, and then walked back and walked up and down flights of stairs. It's just that amount of activity I have to go seek out for myself,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know? And so the people that we're looking at right now who are living in that later stage of life and have had a long health span, not a lifespan, but a long health span where they're functional and active into their later years, they were living potentially very differently than what is common for us to do now. If you're working in an office, if you're working at a desk job, if your lifestyle doesn't involve a lot of movement or physical activity, know that that's something we have to kind of adopt a mindset of ownership around now if we want to see life look like what those older healthy people are experiencing in decades from now.
And that goes back to, yeah, I agree with that. She didn't have to seek it out as much.
Mhm.
It was natural living life for her and in those days. But what I was saying in the beginning, like sometimes you got to take the blindfold off of
Mhm.
things. You got to really look at it, and that can stink. And I've had to do that
Yeah.
myself. But then also taking the blindfold off, aka ownership. You're
Mhm.
gonna have to take some ownership for it at some point.
Mhm.
Um, And that's so, so true. And I'll put this in here, which if you do have a lot of folks that are going through perimenopause, menopause,
Mm-hmm.
that are listening to this, this is kind of a sidebar, is that if you do feel pretty horrible during that season, and it's become, the I Don't Care Club and things like that with menopause and things. But if you do feel really off with that and you're just grouchy and cranky and can't sleep, seek some help for that, because there are true things that impact your hormones, nutrition, movement, muscle, some things like that can make a big difference. So I always that's new coming on the horizon, that people are starting to talk more about truly what can impact you during those seasons and those years. But if you are listening and you're struggling with that and feel like, I just can't get ahead of things, and your body really goes through some somersaults during that time, like composition changes for women, moods especially. So if you're feeling like, man, I really want to get it together and I am trying to focus on health, live, and I'm hitting a brick wall over and over again, do some deep diving, and we can help you with that. But do some deep diving on your hormones, on your lifestyle, because that can really pull you out of some funk on that, and it gets funky.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to actually sort of head in this direction that we're going into, kind of like practical steps, because I think that, as people are listening to this, we're talking in generalities. Everyone's situation is different. The
Mhm.
unique characteristics of their life and their circumstances, their bodies are all different. So we can't sit here and prescribe anything to anyone about what they should do. And obviously, I think, like, if I could snap my fingers, everyone would have a live in their life that they could go, you
Yeah.
know, we'll drop Liv's info in the description for any of you who want your own personal live. But like, everyone, I would love for everyone to have the opportunity to work with someone with your background and with your knowledge base. Not everyone's going to have that,
Sure.
for a host of reasons. So I think sometimes people think that the changes necessary to start this process are so huge
Mhm.
and so monumental. If you could give people who might be looking at this mountain of wanting to change their relationship with their body and feeling really overwhelmed, like one or two small things to try as an experiment with themselves,
Yeah.
what would you recommend?
You said one or two. That's like a preacher get up and just say a passage and sit down, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, one verse. You got one.
Okay, I'm gonna try. I would say first and foremost that it can very much feel like a mountain to climb, right? So I mean, I was over 280 pounds. Like I get it, like 100%. It can be a mountain to climb, right? And so you have to look at day by day. And
Mm.
so the mountain, if you don't do anything about it, if you want to, and again, going to following, do you want to lose weight or not? I did. You have to make a choice. Like, I'm just going to stay here and be comfortable here, and kind of quit complaining about it and say this is I'm okay with this, or start to say, okay, I want to make some changes. It is going to be a mountain, but I'm going to give it my best effort and do what I can do and see where I get. Right? I was never intending on losing 150 pounds. That's just where I ended up. I just started with saying, I feel really crummy all the time. And really, I didn't answer this question before, but the catalyst was for me is that I hated to get dressed for church. Hated
Mm.
it. Hated it. And I remember just like pulling those. It was back in the 90s or early 2000s when we would wear those cardigans with all the buttons.
Ugh.
You remember that? Like
And they're
church.
the gaps in the
Yes, the
buttons.
gaps. And you remember like they were like turquoise and fuchsia. We were all
Hmm.
wearing those, right?
Hmm.
And so I remember putting those on and it was just gapping like crazy. And I remember putting huge brooches on, thinking like, look up here,
Right.
don't look over here. And it got to the point to where I did not want to, I was not comfortable going to church. Going to work was fine because it was, I don't know, it was just different. It wasn't my
Yeah.
family, right? And so, and nobody ever mistreated me in my church. I have the best church ever. But it was just a feeling that I had. And then I realized like if I don't want to go to church because of the way that I feel in my clothes and I'm overeating in excess on Sundays because I'm eating my feelings because I feel bad, which is like the craziest mental cycle. I feel overweight, so I'm going to eat more to
Right.
comfort those feelings, which is going to make me more overweight, right? And so with those things, that's really what to me was like, we got to try something out. And so with that being said, when I started on that path, the things that I did, Megan, were so small. And
Mhm.
if you can get your mind around the smallest things and let the smallest things work,
Yeah.
right? And so I'll go into the small things, but I also want to put this in here too, that to your point, every person's body is different.
Mm.
One of the worst things that you can do is try a fad diet try what someone else is doing, try these various pills, shakes,
Right.
whatever. Because when people work with me, it all has to do with like your diet history. How many times have you dieted in the past? How much do you move? What kind of food do you like? Like so many different factors. So
Mm.
if you will let go of fads, and that might be like something you got to talk to the Lord about. I talked to the Lord a lot when I was going through my journey, but and then start with small. So let me tell you some things that I did and what I encourage my folks to do. And it comes down to what you can stick with, right? So we talked about like protein, we've talked about walking, different things like that. So for me, what I did is I used to eat lunch out every single day.
Mm.
That was my go-to. And it was not anywhere near healthy lunch. It was a McDonald's number two,
Mm-hmm.
2 cheeseburger meal and a Diet Coke, right? For good measure. So I
Sure.
went from that to I started bringing my lunch. That is the only food thing that I changed in the beginning. I
Yeah.
just started bringing my lunch. And then I did a yoga video. It was a DVD. And I laid in the floor and breathed. It was not yoga. It was just laying in the floor and breathing.
Uh-huh.
I did that for 5 minutes, 5 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt so amazing about myself for doing that because I could stick to that.
Yeah.
But man, I'm going to tell you what, Megan, I complained about doing that yoga video. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't want to do it. I complained about it. I wasn't excited about it, but I went in there, going back to keeping promises to yourself,
Yeah.
made sure to do that. And then after I got in a routine and rhythm, and I did that yoga video 30, 60 days. Like it wasn't like, okay, now I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something else. I allowed that to start building a habit of when I come home from work, I move my body.
Mm.
Lay on the floor and breathe for 5 minutes, right? But then it started like a walking video. And then I started taking my breakfast and my lunch. But it was a 2-year process. So it was small changes over time. So that's where I would ask, as you're listening to this, what change do you feel like you can make? And some of the high points to hit would be less eating out, moving your body, take your current step count, get real honest about it. I'm moving 3,000 steps a day. Okay, that's your base. Can you get 4,000 for 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Can you get 4,000 for 90 days?
Right.
And then move to 5. But people won't allow like 4,000 to be enough.
Right.
They're like,
Yeah.
well, that's not going to do anything. That's not going to do anything. It
Find,
will. It's setting that up. Go
yeah,
ahead.
you're finding like the smallest unit of change that you know you can hang on to.
Yes.
That's
And so
brilliant.
yeah. So but people just have such a hard time of like letting that be enough.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to go all in. Well, you can go all in, but if you go all in, how's that worked for you in the past?
Right. And
Right.
then you're setting yourself up for that feeling of disappointment when instead you could be feeding your level of confidence in your ability to make change with these little changes stacking up over time.
Yes.
I
So the
love it.
same thing with protein. So let's talk about protein a little bit. So this is some math for everyone listening. So on a protein scale, what a person needs is zero 0.8 up to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So you're going to take what your ideal body weight is and take that and multiply that out and see where you should be on
Mhm.
your daily protein goals. And so protein is very important for many, many reasons. You want to that can be a game changer. Protein and walking can change your life
Yeah.
instantly. Take a gauge of where you're at currently on protein. Track your food. I use my Fitness Pal. Track your food for a day. If you track your food and you're getting 40 grams of protein, which you probably are,
Mm.
40 to 50 grams, where you likely need 140 grams, take that baseline of where you're at 40 and then start drinking a protein shake every morning.
Yeah.
And that's an extra 30 grams right there and make that a habit. You've already almost doubled likely your protein intake by adding in that protein shake.
I love it. Really quick before we
Yeah.
wrap up, because I could talk to you for
Yeah.
years about this. So if we have to do a part 2 at some point, I'll reach out. How can people connect with you if they want to follow what you're doing, if they want to get with you and maybe work with you as a client? What's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody wants to work with me, they can find me on social media at Live Heal Nutrition. I have a website, livehillnutrition.net. I have a weekly podcast, Living Well with Liv Hill. And there is a boatload of free information. So if you want free information just to get to know me, just to see what's going on, log into that, listen to that, pick up the free resources. We also do church seminars, which are fantastic for outreach. Absolutely amazing for outreach. We get so many people come in. We talk about recipes, and
Absolutely.
people are like, you're going to talk about a recipe and give me a grocery guide? Sign me up. It's, yeah, huge on outreach. So we do one-on-one coaching. We have 6 coaches on staff, and then we also can do workshops and things like that. Or you can just come hang out with us and pick our brains for tips.
I love it. I am so excited about everything you have going on. Thank you for just lending your wisdom and your experience to this whole conversation. I hope tons of people can connect with you about this, because I think it really is a huge need. And it's been just so great to chat with you.
Yeah, you too. You guys are doing an amazing ministry. So I'm blessed to be a part of it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, girl. Hey everyone, Megan again. I really hope that you enjoyed my talk with Liv. I hope that it was something that you could take something from and apply it to your life. Again, this is not meant to be an episode about weight loss for weight loss's sake, or even nutrition for nutrition's sake. It's about helping each of you understand the value of taking care of your body, of showing up for yourself. And so anyway, it spoke to me. I hope it speaks to you. Thank you so much to Liv for coming onto the podcast and lending us her wisdom, and all of her experience. I mean, she's just doing absolutely incredible work. If you want to get a hold of Liv or talk to her team or just follow what she's doing, taking advantage of the free material she puts out, of her podcast, all of that is noted down in the description below. So please go take a look and reach out to her. We love what she's doing and really want to support her. And I think that everyone could benefit from just hearing more of what she has to say. One other quick announcement. So if you are going on the cruise, Singles at Sea, if you don't know about this, we're going on a cruise in February, and there is still plenty of room on the ship. So you are more than welcome to sign up. The information for how to contact Chelsea, our travel coordinator, is below. But just so everyone knows, if you've already booked your room, our final payment deadline is coming up in late November. So November 23rd is going to be the deadline to have your fully paid amount. There's a word for this. To have the full cost, I guess, paid. And remember that the price that Chelsea will give you includes everything. It includes all of your meals. It includes gratuities. It includes all of the fees. A lot of those times, those things are like jotted down in the corners and in the margins of all of your material. It's got it all lumped into that. If you haven't booked it and you'd like to, remember you only need to, at least between now and November 23rd, you only need to put down $200 to reserve a cabin. And if you reserve with a friend, you guys can each contribute $100 of that. So it can be selected and booked for a really low cost right now, but you'll have to have that amount ready to go by November 23rd to retain the pricing. So please reach out to Chelsea if you have any questions, and stay tuned for more from us about that. Otherwise, the only other thing I'll kind of tease for you guys is that we've got some big changes coming, all good changes. We're going to be shifting focus toward the end of this year toward really connecting and serving with the people who are already working with us and doing our best to target potential matches for them even more than we are right now. So we'll be rearranging our schedule a bit, but just know that our end of year sale is going to start on Black Friday, as it always does. And you're going to want to mark that in your calendar if you've been thinking about signing up to work with us in our matchmaking capacity. This is the time of year that you're going to want to do it, because we have some changes coming up in early next year that, just might be something you want to consider. So keep an eye out for that. We'll have more info about that sale coming up shortly. Otherwise, thank you guys for listening. Steven sends his love. He'll be back with us in the studio later on this week to record this week's episode. And yeah, we just have some cool and exciting stuff to talk about. I hope that you all have a wonderful week. See you guys soon.